are better, and the bullet headings. So here, adding some more clarity, but the font is still too small. There's too much text, and the line length is too long. So it's better, but it's not great. So on top of that, we're giving them everything at once. So instead of what they need at the time. So they will be spending their time reading this slide and not listening to us. So if this slide is a slide in a PowerPoint, it's going to be ineffective. This version is even better. So it's an attractive table. It makes things easier to read. There's some bolded items. It's very clear based on the headings, what the different information is. Information is separated and grouped so we can scan. The line length is shorter. This is getting to be a good presentation of the information. This one, optionally, it adds some bullets. This might be easier in some cases, depending on the information. And the last example is adding some small visuals, some small icons. This works well for presentations and PowerPoint. It's not as effective if you're just sending an email, because emails, they tend not to handle the graphics that well, but also they tend to have a faster momentum, right? But in a PowerPoint, adding these graphics, and take a look at, let's take a look at the beginning again. So if you take this information, and maybe I spent only 10 minutes presenting the information differently. This is much easier to read. The line length is shorter. It's easier on the eyes. People can understand this way better than the first one. Okay? And if we look at some other concepts around information design, proximity, grouping, and hierarchy, they don't sound like scary terms, I hope, but grouping is kind of what we've been doing in the email, for the elections, for the knitting elections, finding out what elements are there. Well, there were people and there were things they needed to bring. And grouping. We group related items together and we create a visual hierarchy if it's needed. Okay? So the objectives of a presentation, for example, notice that they're all the same size, they're all the same shape, they're not put in any particular order. They're all equally weighted visually. And what does this infer? It infers that they're all equal and unordered, and there's no real order or hierarchy to these objectives. Let me show you a different example. But in this version, the objectives are numbered and they're put in an order. So this might infer meaning to your stakeholders. It could mean some kind of order, chronological or importance, but we don't want to infer order when there is none, because it mixes up our message that we want to give. So this is a very intentional design technique, is whether you're going to use numbered items or not. This is an unordered list. It infers absolutely no priority or hierarchy or importance at all. Now let's take a look at this one. Look at how these objectives are now ordered. They're ordered as a subset to a main one. Okay, so just that very small indent actually changes the meaning of this slide and of this information. It infers that these three objectives are nested and they're part of the main one. Okay, so isn't that interesting that just a slight indent changes the meaning, and then we're back to form and function. So how we place elements on a page infers meaning. And this placement of objectives on the page was very intentional. They're very equally weighted visually, so they carry the same weight, inferring that one is not more important than the other. They are not numbered. They are not in any hierarchy. And when you read the objectives, it makes sense to engage stakeholders in presentations, to design and create effective presentations, to understand cognitive science techniques, and to apply cognitive science techniques to presentations. There is no order to those objectives. There is no one is more important than the other. Okay? So when we're communicating non-verbally and actually visually, by the way that we put elements on a slide, we need to be very careful about how we place elements on the page and how we group information. I'm going to get now into something called contrast. And contrast is using different color, size, shape to create interest and emphasis. Okay? Now look at this first table. You can't really tell that the first row is a header rule. There's nothing to differentiate it from the other data. And so what happens when you use a table like this is that you're forcing stakeholders to spend time figuring this out. And again, we don't have one stakeholder. Maybe we have 10, maybe we have 20. If this is going to be put in front of users, maybe we have 500 or 1,000 users, okay? We are forcing them to spend their time to figure this out rather than make it easy and save them time and frustration and confusion. In the second example, it's very clear that this first row is actually a header row, and all the data underneath reflects the header. Now, this is a very good technique, contrast, to differentiate between different elements. And here's another example of before, and we saw this one already, and after. So we're using contrast, we're using grouping, okay, proximity even. This information is closest to this information, so together we create meaning. Okay? And that brings us to the conclusion of this presentation, which is that information design helps you get more out of less. Information design saves you time, and information design increases quality. I am happy to connect with anybody. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Anybody who's attended this presentation, I'll be happy to connect with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you very much, Pamela. Now it's time to ask your questions. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. You can raise your hand or probably drop your questions in the chat box and I'm going to read them out. So let's hear from you. Any questions, please? Feel free to drop. So she would be glad to answer all your questions. Thank you so much, Pamela. Coming from a content writing background, I get what you say, Lord. I understand what you're trying to say or what you've shared with us today because, you know, people tend to react to what appeals to their visuals more. And people understand better when they see things they understand and when things are not so packed. And so that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And I also learned new things today, actually. I do. And it also kind of gave me insights into how to design things better. So if you have more questions or you have insight, whatever you have to ask, please drop it in the chat box and she'll be glad to answer your questions. Or you can as well raise your hands up and I would, pick you.
You know, the interesting thing about information design is that most people don't know about it, and most people don't see the relevance to their job until it's kind of put in front of them. And I think that if somebody were to ask you, kind of point blank saying, hey, do you do information design or do you think there's value in that? They might say, no, I'm not a graphic designer. No, it doesn't have any relevance to me at all. But as we saw with the different examples, that every day, if we can apply information design concepts to our work, then we are ahead. We have better communication. We even have a more effective brand in the workplace because people can rely on us to get good information, and that they know they're going to get quality and easy to understand information from us. I mean, don't we all have some people in our workplace that, oh no, they're sending me an email, I just don't understand their emails, right? Because those emails don't think about the user. They don't think about who's ingesting that information and what they actually need.
Yeah, that's true. I myself, when I see emails that are so packed, I'm like, I don't have strength. So if I just look at probably the subject and it's something of importance and probably no high priority, I can just probably start it and just let it be for later, because I can't really like go through it. It's tiring, really tiring. So understand. Overall, it makes our work easier, right? It makes people want to read what you have to give. Yeah. When you give in maybe a report or whatever it is you're sending in, it makes people want to see what you're doing. It will always place yours first before other people, and that will make your work easier overall.
Oh, 100%. And, if you want to get promoted in the workplace, it's about communication, because there's a lot of people who have the same technical skills that you do, and you in global you. But the differentiating factor is communication. So when I was writing my book called Get the Job, I interviewed lots and lots of HR people, and I asked the same question. I said, what do these VPs and senior VPs, what do they have that other people don't? And the answer was social skills, communication. That's what they have. They're not smarter, they don't work harder, they're not better, but they have communication skills. So as you were pointing out about, we're just in such a visual society now, it's another skill that we can add to our toolbox, which is, can we be a visual communicator when that often is the number one way that we are communicating with our stakeholders?
Yeah, true. True. And that got me thinking, for people applying for jobs, right? If you can make your cover letter probably easy to read, because not so packed, easy to read, you make use of your white spaces and the rest, and you put your subjects or probably highlights the important points you want. Probably you make it bold. I guess it will make the recruiter or talent manager read your post or read your cover letter and like get the main points they want, because they're actually scanning through the cover letters. They don't have the time to settle down and read through. So I think this is something aspiring business analysts or people who are in the job market looking for jobs should also consider. Not just people already on the job, people who are also looking for a job can take up this also. Thank you so much. This makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
That's an excellent point, because your resume and your cover letter, it gets there before you do. And so that's really the first impression that you are showing recruiters and HR people about how you communicate. And I mean, that's a wonderful example of how important information design is.
Yeah, very important. And also probably in the workspace you're trying, sometimes it's just the tiny things, the tiny details that stand us out. Not necessarily maybe coming to do big things, right? So if you're able to like set yourself out when you're making reports, you might probably be a junior staff, not necessarily a senior staff, irrespective of your position in the company, and just try to make your things stand out, do things differently. You don't have to do a lot to make it make sense, just simple and easy to understand. So thank you so much, Pamela. This makes a lot of sense. And I also believe that we have people who have learned a lot here, probably aspiring business analysts, and I'm sure they've picked this point, and also experienced business analysts on this session. I'm sure that everybody, one way or the other, is thinking of ways, because as we were talking and presenting, I was imagining different things, right? How to make things better, how to structure things better, how to structure the information better. And I know a lot of other people on here are doing the same or have gotten the same insights. So thank you very much. If you're on here, you can connect with Pamela. She would definitely respond to you, right? She's ready to connect. Any questions you have, feel free to reach out to us. And If you're not following us on our social media platforms, this is the right time to do it, because where this comes from, we have more coming, right? We have a lot planned for you. And Pamela, we hope to see more of you, right? When we call you, answer us sometime next time in the future. We hope to see your face. We hope to learn from you more. And also, if you have any questions, if you need a supporting community, Dobac is here for you. We are looking out for business analysts. Whether you're experienced or you're aspiring to be a business analyst, we're here for you. We'll ensure you get the right resources to thrive, and we'll push you to where you're supposed to be. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for being on here. See you in our next session next week. All
Thank
right.
you. My
Yeah.
pleasure.
Thank you. So bye, everyone. Mhm.